Hey there, fuckers. Welcome back to An World Peace, and thanks so much for tuning in for episode 2. I so appreciate all of the love and support from episode 1, albeit super short and sweet. Like I said, wanted to give you a chance to take a Klonopin before we got into the good stuff. So I want to give a quick trigger warning before we continue. This episode contains mentions of mental illness and sexual assault. Please take good care of you if you choose to listen. And I will include some resources should you or someone you know be struggling with the topics that we're mentioning today. On today's episode, I want to dive real deep into my psyche. No, I'm just kidding. I'd literally rather shit my pants in public, but I do want to explore my story with mental illness in the hopes that my mentally ill baddies out there can relate and perhaps may even want to chat about their own struggles. And please know that if you ever do want to chat with me, I am so fucking more than welcome to. Like, you are more than welcome to. I'm so excited about that. That is one of the reasons I started this show, was to just connect with more of you. So if you ever want to do that, you can find me on Instagram. It's at @InWorldPeacePod. I alluded to this in my first brief episode, but my battle with mental illness began when I was very young. I was 7 when I had my first panic attack, and I remember it incredibly vividly. I was holding the hand of a kid named Carter saying the Our Father in Mass one day. This was obviously during my tenure being involved in the Catholic Church, and we all know how that one ended. Anyway, Carter had what will heretofore be known as the sweatiest palm in all of history, and I still think about this at least once a week, and I do be praying that he's okay. I told my teacher that I needed to go to the bathroom, and I hightailed my ass to the restroom at the back of the church, which basically reeked of old women and incense, so also read it smelled really fucking foul. And I kind of just hyperventilated for a moment before deciding to chug water out of the sink and splash my face with it. So, like, I can't stress enough how it blows my mind that even as a 7-year-old, I sort of just like, my body just kind of took over and sort of knew what to do, right? Like, the fight or flight was so real that my body was just like, yep, no, I got this. Like no worries. And I just am fascinated by that because it just really goes to show how much our bodies keep track of. And I'll get into that later a little bit more in this episode, but that's always just floored me. So suffice to say, I knew pretty early on that my brain probably didn't operate in the same way as the average kid my age. So for context here, my parents had me at age 43. I'm, again, the youngest of 5 children. There's 15 years between my oldest sibling and myself. So I grew up pretty, I would say, mature for my age, but, I'm certainly fucking not now. But I thought about things that I don't think my, like, 7-year-old counterparts were thinking about. So I remember I would, like, go into my parents' bathroom at their house, and I would, like, lock myself in there, and I'm, like, 7 years old, right? And I would just cry thinking about the fact that my parents would die someday, and that they would maybe die before, like, friends of mine, like, their parents did, because they were older. And so that really just, like, drove home for me that I'm a really fucking existential person and literally always have been. And I honestly don't think I would change that about myself. I think it keeps me on my toes, but there is a certain, like, anticipatory grief that comes with being kind of an existential person who thinks about, like, bigger things and who has really big feelings and doesn't really know what to do with them, especially as a 7-year-old. So it has its good sides. It has its bad sides. It is a complex reality of being me. So I know a lot of other people who are listening to this can probably relate. So yeah, it's both a blessing and a curse. Anywho, let's get to the goods, better known as when I became motherfucking medicated. So medication obviously gets a bad rep, and there have been instances in my life where I would have told you that I didn't think medication really served a purpose for me. And I don't know what fucked up delusional Kool-Aid I was sipping then other than Tanya Zuckerbrot's F Factor diet, and that's a whole other fucking conversation. But sweet baby Maggie, you were so, so wrong. I basically always think that there is a time and place for medication in this hellscape that we're in. But mostly, I just think that if you think that it serves you, it's such a personal choice, and it's not one that anyone else can make for you. And anyone who wants to give you their personal opinion on why you shouldn't take medication, either hasn't been on it long enough, hasn't been on it ever, or is just an asshole, and I'll almost always assume the latter. So I first became medicated at age 14. Now, I don't necessarily like recommend this to everyone I know, like, hey, go get yourself an RX at age 14. Um, but I mean, the real big caveat here as well is that I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Don't be fucking delusional. All right. But I was dealing with some pretty intense anxiety at the time. And so I did waltz into my primary care's office and I told her how I was feeling. And she prescribed me a low dose of Celexa, which I ended up being on for about 5 years. Now, like I said, I'm not exactly the biggest proponent of just waltzing into your primary care's office and getting a medication. And obviously, knowing what I know now, I think I probably would have waited and probably tried some deep breathing and also maybe not giving a fuck about what the stupid bitches in my grade thought of my off brand Uggs. But alas, 14 is a crippling age, and you couldn't pay me a Bezos sized salary to go back to that hellscape of a time. Let's fast forward a bit and also bypass some pretty intense trauma and land at age 19. I had been sexually assaulted in high school and as a kid, and I was in my first serious relationship in college. I was a sophomore in college at the time, and I had already changed majors twice and was about to change for the third time. And I was in for the worst semester of my life when I switched to Wellbutrin. Now, a little just side note here is that I think it's important to explain why I'm mentioning like the specifics of the medications I've tried. And the reason is this. Every single time that I have been at my lowest mentally, with really bad anxiety or really bad depression or my panic attacks just would not let up, I have always been curious to know what other people have tried, what medications they've tried, what modalities of movement, of mindfulness, all the things. I've always just wondered all of it because I know what it's like to be at the end of your fucking rope and to not know what you should try next. And I also know what it's like to find some hope when you do find a medication that works for you. So, all that to say, I like to be thorough when explaining this. That does not mean that it will work for you in the same way that it worked for me. But I think, especially being a woman in America, it is so important to really ground yourself with some knowledge about the medications that are available to you, the different modalities of healing that are available to you far before you ever step foot into a psychiatric care practitioner's office or the office of your primary care who might be providing you with a psychiatric medication. So that's just my little rant there about like why I think it's important to give you context on the medications I'm on or have been on in my past and do with that information what you will. Use it wisely and always be sure that you are doing your own research because a lot of times the medical system fails us and it can be really hard to find something that works for you. Carrying fucking on. So, I have been on most medications that you can think of. So shortly after I was on Wellbutrin, when I turned 21, I was on Zoloft. That shit made me feel like a fucking zombie. I've been on Buzaprone or Buspar, whatever the fuck that is. That made me feel like I was gonna have a stroke. So there's that. I remember sitting in class one time, and I had just started Buspar. So it's like you can kind of have those little like brain zap moments or whatever. And I was sitting in class and I legit was like, my brain is going to light on fire and I'm gonna shoot up through the roof. Like I'm gonna rocket launch my bitch ass out of here. And I mean I would have wanted to. It was a terrible class, but like I just so vividly remember that. And like starting a new medication is so gnarly. Like it is just such a journey. And so if you are in that process right now, I stand with you. It sucks. I totally understand. It does get better. So stick with it. But then I was on Zoloft and then I actually came off of SSRIs for like 3 years. And during my first my first year when I was in New York, I wasn't on an SSRI. I've had Xanax for 8 years because of my panic attacks and because of my PTSD. But yeah, I mean, I never really used anything like when I was in New York. I think I used a like beta blocker here and there if I would get nervous before like teaching a class or something, but that was like pretty much the extent of it. So during COVID, then I got put on Lexapro. We all know how COVID was. Like I'm so sorry. I don't know a single person who wasn't like at least self-medicating during COVID. So, like, I just figured I would do both self-medicating and real medicating, spice it up, get a little bit of both. So anyway, those are the medications I've been on for the most part. I probably missed a few. I'm on Prestique now, so I mean, there you have it, If you want to come over and look at my medication cabinet, you're more than welcome. All right, getting back into it. Now, obviously, my recovering self-help junkie ass loves a fucking action item. All right. So if that is you, and I assume that, you might be similar if you're listening to this, please know that these episodes will have tangible action items for you, things you can maybe try or implement that are small, but, again, actionable that you can implement into your daily life. But I want to stress here, please take what resonates and fucking leave the rest to die. Because this is not all or nothing. Life is not black and white. And I speak mostly to myself here more than anyone. So I want to give kind of a quick rundown of some shit that really helped me when I was at my lowest mentally. So here's kind of your action item list, things that you could maybe start implementing into your day to day. A couple of them are relatively new. Like I consistently add to this list, and I am always trying to find things that will make my brain work with my body as much as possible and vice versa, and just kind of make my life fucking easier, right? Being a mentally ill girl is hard fucking work, bitch. Okay, so let's get into it. This is when I'm at my lowest mentally, or when I've just had a really bad day, week, month, or year. We have them, right? Hot girls can't be like mentally stable all the time. No, there's not a hot girl on the planet who is not mentally ill. All right. I'm going to say that right now. There's not a hot girl on this planet who's not mentally ill, who doesn't have some kind of mental situation going on. All right. So if you think that's false, you're just dead wrong. All right. Getting into it. So the first thing is shaking my body or dancing. I picked this up when I started taking the class by Taryn Toomey when I was living in New York, which is just like a very, very like interesting is the only word that comes to mind. But I mean, there's so many other things I could say. Like it's the most primal workout I've ever done. I like hesitate to even call it a workout, really. So when you think about like animals after they've just fought or they've just like ran or, ran from a predator, whatever, they shake their body to release that excess energy, and it helps them get back into their parasympathetic nervous system. So there you go. There's that. Dancing, I actually just started doing like a little bit more dancing again. Used to have a really toxic relationship with it because I grew up competitive dancing. So, it was kind of like an all or nothing mentality sort of thing. And dancing is fucking fun, dude. Like dancing before a job interview or dancing before like a big thing you've got going on, like something you're nervous for. Hell yeah, it's amazing. This one's also kind of relatively new. It's humming. So like, humming the tune to a song, whatever. So humming actually stimulates your vagus nerve, and your vagus nerve helps you to drop back into that parasympathetic nervous system. So that sort of state of rest and digest. So you could also do like some singing too, like that, also applicable. The next one, I mean, like, please don't shoot the messenger on this one. Cold anything, cold plunge, cold shower, cold compress on your forehead, cold compress on your neck, cold compress on your chest. Bitch, shove your face in a bowl of ice cold water first thing in the morning. Tell me you don't fucking feel better. Like, this is why I take my ice roller everywhere with me. I take that fucking thing everywhere. Like, I do not go on a trip without an ice roller. Like, cold exposure has single-handedly it has been the one thing that I have done consistently in the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years that I know has made a drastic difference in my nervous system, in healing my nervous system. So do with that what you will. It's not like you have to like listen, bitch, you don't have to like hop into a tub that's negative 42 degrees every morning, like fucking Wim Hof or whatever. Like you don't have to do that. Like who's that fucking oh my God, Tony Robbins. Like you don't have to like fucking Tony Robbins it, you know what I mean? But doing some kind of like cold exposure is helpful. I'm so sorry. So another thing that really helps me is easy meals that pack a punch. So when I'm feeling real like depressy or really anxious and I can't get the panic attacks to stop, or I'm just like so heightened, I often am not eating enough. So that's the first thing here. And I need an easy meal that really packs a punch in terms of protein, carb, and just overall density. So I need it to be calorically dense. For me, a meal like this is like Annie's mac and cheese with some like pre-made chicken sausage and like a frozen veggie in it. Like it can be so fucking like think of something you would feed a toddler, okay? And then make that for yourself. All right, that's it. Obviously, continuing with your therapy and your meds. You should continue with your therapy and meds anyway, but like especially when you're in a bad spot mentally. That is like the one thing that cannot go. It is the one staple item on this list that has to stay. Another thing I have found that are extremely helpful, and again, do not shoot the messenger on this one, are short, emphasis on short meditations. I use Calm and Insight Timer. Insight Timer is free, and Calm has some really great ones. I think it's like $60 for the year or something like that. Also, their sleep meditations are like top tier, next level. Killian Murphy does a sleep story on the Calm app, so do with that information what you will. The next one that I really recommend if you are, again, somebody who's like gets highly anxious or gets into these really intense states of overwhelm is walking meditations. So you can find a lot of them on YouTube, but I use the Superhuman app. Let me tell you about the Superhuman app, you guys. It's by Mimi Bouchard, I think is her name. I started using the Superhuman app. They don't pay me to say this, by the way. They fucking should, but they don't pay me. So I started using this app like 3 years ago. I've been using it forever. I was using it back when it was like named something different. And walking meditations are absolutely life-changing. They are just a delight, especially again, like I said, if you're a super highly anxious person, going out for a walk, doing like a low impact activity is so, so beneficial. And these like the walking meditations are just next level. Chef's kiss. Love it. Walking generally is great. So when you walk, you actually activate both parts of your brain because your eyes tend to move side to side, like left to right. So it kind of mimics the bilateral stimulation that you get from EMDR therapy, which I'll talk about later in the episode. So yeah, just like a general side note there. I always stick to slow movement and low impact exercises when I'm in like a state of I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, whatever. It's yoga at home, it's doing Pilates at home. I do a lot of Sculpt Society. I love their app. Melissa Wood Health is another great app for like low impact workouts. That shit is amazing. And also like just do that anyway. Like it's good for your fucking body, man. So again, we're not shooting the messenger on this one. The 5-4-3-2-1 exercise and breathing exercises like box breathing. So 5-4-3-2-1 is like 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. I don't know. Use whatever senses are your fucking best or whatever. I don't care. Breathing exercises like box breathing. So box breathing is like inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, rest for 4. You can do that with 5, 6 counts, like live your truth. Another one I use is 4-7-8. So you inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Something I wish somebody told me sooner is to make your exhale longer than your inhale. It helps to really just slow down your nervous system. So one thing that you must do immediately, I literally don't care who you are, is make a list on your iPhone of comfort movies. So I have a whole list, and when I'm feeling real like in my feels or just feeling some big feelings, whatever, I almost always will turn on one of these movies. So like which includes, but is not limited to, Practical Magic, Casper, Legally Blonde, Mean Girls, Little Women, Now and Then, Mermaids, like the list goes on. Honorable mention, Sleepy Hollow. Like you just pick your comfort movies, make a list of them. The last thing that your brain wants to do when you are in fight or flight, or when you are sad, or when you can't fucking even think about the next thing because you're so overwhelmed, the last thing your brain wants to do is when you're trying to figure out what your comfort movies are is have to think about it. So just make the list, then you can go into your phone right when you're feeling some type of way, and they're right there for you. This applies for pretty much everything. I have a literal list on my notes app on my iPhone that says like my kit, and it has tangible things I can do on this list if I'm ever having a panic attack and I'm alone, if I'm ever having a panic attack with someone else, if I'm feeling super overwhelmed, like, and it's all basically like grounding techniques, right? Laying on the floor, using a weighted blanket, getting something cold, using a warhead, like anything. Like, make these lists for yourself so that future you doesn't have to think about it when you're in that really tough moment. Circling back here, this says my list is easy comfort recipes. That kind of ties in with like easy meals that pack a punch. You can literally just Google easy comfort food recipes. And again, just giving you some nutrients, giving you something that's nutrient dense and also just dense calorically so that you can get something in your body. Body's got to function, girl. I have what are called bare minimum routines. So I have like a bare minimum skincare routine, a bare minimum makeup routine, a bare minimum dressing routine, and a bare minimum morning routine. So, like, for example, bare minimum morning routine will always include brushing my teeth, splashing some cold water on my face. And if I have the energy, we can move into a bare minimum skincare routine. If I don't, there's no fucking skincare for that day. Like, sometimes shit hits the fan and you don't have the mental capacity to do that. So just kind of think of what your bare minimums are. If you have children, obviously this is different, but your bare minimum routines will become the backbone of your life when you are in these kind of lower moments or moments where you just don't have the energy to think about what's coming next. And the last thing I've got is something mindless to do. So crocheting, gem art, painting, whatever the fuck it is. I got into these gem art things. They're called paint gem. God, you guys, I got attacked by I was fucking attacked. That's the only word for it, by Instagram ads for these things. And what did I do? I ordered like a whole fucking kit. It's like $40. I ordered the whole thing. I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna test one out. Nope, the whole thing. And they're gorgeous. They're so fun. And also you get like an art project at the end of it. So, live your truth. So I have definitely learned to sense when I'm getting to that state of overwhelm mentally, but I am 1000% still learning as I go. I'm constantly implementing new things, you guys, nearly daily to help regulate my nervous system. So I'm currently going on a journey of microdosing. So I will definitely be sure to keep you updated on my journey there. But the moral of the story with anything mental health related is that you must do what works for you. Not for the influencer on TikTok, not for your sister or your mom or your brother or your best friend, not me, not anybody else. Only you can make the decision of what is best for you and your little brain. I'd obviously be remiss to fail to mention how much talk therapy has served me on my mental health journey. I've been in therapy for 8 years, and it is not hyperbole to say that it saved my life on multiple occasions. My first therapist was a lovely maternal woman named Carol in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So Carol and I started working together during the summer that I was processing the death of a very good friend of mine. The death of my grandma Aunt Dorothy happened that summer, and she was my last living grandparent, the only grandparent I really knew. And it was also the summer that my rape happened. We did extensive hours of EMDR therapy, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it is a really valuable therapeutic modality, especially if you are somebody who has PTSD or you have experienced significant trauma in your life. My EMDR sessions during my senior year of college were aggressive, and that feels, again, like not even the right word. Like they were so fucking intense. Carol and I did EMDR a couple of times a week. And I remember I would go home afterwards and sleep for like 11, 12, sometimes 13 hours at a time. That's how exhausting they were. Carol helped me heal and probably saved me in ways that I still really can't articulate to this day. She was just so, so massively helpful at a time where I desperately, desperately needed it. My therapist when I moved home after college until I moved to New York was a woman named Cindy. She was a war vet and she worked with patients with PTSD. She helped me through what I now know as some of the most transformative months of my life. I sometimes cannot begin to imagine what it's like for a therapist to sit there and sort of just watch their patients transform before their eyes. My sister and my brother in law are both therapists, and I often wonder if this is the most gratifying part of working in mental health care. I then moved on to Christine, my current therapist, because apparently I have a thing for female therapists whose name begin with C. Christine and I started working together in early 2020. I saw her in person for literally 3 sessions, and then the world shut down because of COVID. It was the best, dude. Like, her office was I think my apartment was, like, 5 minutes. Like, it was a 5-minute walk from her office in Tribeca. Dude, it was the best. But now I see her on Zoom, and being in therapy is still single-handedly one of the best investments I make in the care for myself. So, I got diagnosed formally with ADHD in March of 2022. I was in the absolute fucking throes of planning my wedding, and honestly, I was so tired that I did what any tired person would do. And I tried every holistic remedy first before ever trying medication because how dare I need medication for something that I was born with? This brings me to the topic of neurodivergence, which is not new to myself or to my family. About 90% of my family is neurodivergent in some capacity. And a lot of people ask me regularly how I got diagnosed or how that kind of journey came to be. And truthfully, it normally is a bitch of a process that can involve hours of testing and survey taking, i.e., a neurodivergent person's worst fucking nightmare. And in my humble opinion, it's designed that way because why the fuck would anything in the American medical system be simple? So, the long story made kind of short on the diagnosis of ADHD is that it began with a pretty liberal primary care doctor who upon me telling her I couldn't focus in college, just gave me Adderall. And I'm not talking about like any Adderall, you guys. I'm talking about like 20 milligram extended release Adderall, like the really good shit. So I guess she was either on drugs herself or just knew from the minute I opened my mouth that I was ADHD as fuck, which it's probably the latter. I actually eventually never took said Adderall. I think I tried it once and then I literally just gave it back to my roommates. I literally was like, "Do you want this?" I kept going on my merry way, and I never really came back to the theory that I was ADHD. Like, I just never revisited that ever again until I honestly couldn't ignore it anymore. I was having trouble with really basic shit. And by the way, again, just stressing that this is in the midst of the time when I was planning my wedding. We had just bought a house, we had just moved cities, and my husband and I had both just gotten new jobs. So, like, having trouble with basic shit was, like, kinda not on the menu for me, like, not like, not really something that I could just, like, do. But, yeah, the sheer energy it took to maintain my executive function, to do the basic tasks of being a human, down to brushing my teeth, because who the fuck enjoys brushing their teeth? Let's have a conversation about this really quick. If you do, I am convinced that you are Christian Bale in American Psycho. I I don't know a single person who likes brushing their teeth, and my mom has been a dental hygienist for, wait for it, 50 fucking years. Okay, back to the story. Anywho, my work began to be impacted by the fact that I was very clearly ADHD and just not doing anything about it. I was so fucking tired all the time from literally just trying to be a person who, like, existed in the world, right? So, like, the thing with ADHD people is that our executive function is massively impacted when we are not medicated or not taking care of our ADHD in the way that we should. And this was at a time where I didn't really admittedly know a ton about ADHD and how it impacted women. The symptoms for women having ADHD are so much different from how it looks in men. And same with young girls and young boys. It just looks different based on gender a lot of times. So one thing that I always say is like, a non-neurodivergent person or a non-ADHD person can wake up in the morning and immediately think to themselves, perfect, I gotta go brush my teeth. I gotta go wash my face. I'm gonna let the dogs out. I'm gonna, do the dishes quick, clean up, blah, 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 get my clothes changed for the day, etc. An ADHD person wakes up and looks at brushing their teeth as like basically the most monumental task of all time. And it's not because we, like to be fucking dramatic, although I do love the drama. I do love the drama of being an ADHD person, believe me. It just takes so much energy to do the simple tasks that people who aren't neurodivergent don't really have to think about. This also, like, should be noted. This isn't some story, by the way, of how I was prescribed medication and all of this went away. I'm still very much in my own battle of deciding what medication is right for me, if any, right now. And I'm on the hunt for a new psychiatrist, actually, because as stated before, this shit can just never be simple. So, my sister, who is the therapist, was really the one who began to teach myself and my family a lot about neurodivergence and especially how it affects women. There's actually an amazing speech that's given by, I think her name is M. Rusciano, I think is how you pronounce her last name, that highlights what it is like to what it is like to have ADHD as a woman. Because again, the symptoms are so different from a male who has ADHD. I've never heard something so profound and spot on. I cried like 7 times during her speech, so I will link it in the show notes from today. So, as you can see, my mental health journey has been absolutely so fucking long. Oh my God. And a wee bit exhausting, but I do finally feel like perhaps I'm getting into a groove here. I am sure I will fuck it all to hell here soon by, like, I don't know, getting pregnant or requesting a medication change. So, which, like, I'm thinking about both. So, that'll be sick. So, anyway, now is the segment where we get into world war or world peace. This week's topic, oh my God. Oh my God, you guys. My husband and I have had contractors in our home for what feels like forever. We just had mold remediation done on our house that we found pretty unexpectedly. Just had our roof redone from hail damage. We had got new gutters put in. Like I'm like just all the shit. Now we have to have drywall replaced. Like it's just a clusterfuck. All right. And so I'm just, beep bopping around the house while some of these contractors are in our basement. And listen, I'm not like some highfalutin white woman who's like, pissed that contractors like use the bathroom. I told them to use the bathroom in the basement if they needed it. Okay. We don't really use this bathroom often. It's very scary. It used to be like this bright yellow. It has like a Beetlejuice floor in it. It's very, very scary. All right. However, I go down here the other day and this is like contractors were here like 2 days prior, right? So I go down and I beep up my little way into the bathroom. And there is urine in the toilet that can only be described as looking like split pea soup. It was not a number two. It was not a dookie, but it was absolutely urine. And it was so like, I was like, oh my God, you're so dehydrated. Like, which brings me to the next topic. So that's world war. That starts a world war in my fucking brain because then I think to myself, oh my God, does it like smell down here? It like the whole thing. It's aggressive. All right. That brings me to my next topic though, dehydration. Let's talk about Stanley Cups. I'm not talking about the hockey thing, by the way. I said that to somebody last week and they thought I was talking about the hockey like tournament Stanley Cup. No, I'm talking about like the water bottle Stanley Cups. Okay. I want to talk specifically about holders, like the crossbody straps for Stanley Cups. I'm so sorry I'm giving this world war. I love a Stanley Cup. All right. I'm a fucking slut for a Stanley Cup. I love being hydrated. It's a vibe. I love it. Okay. However, the strap, the crossbody bag to hold your Culligan tank sized water bottle. I mean, these water bottles, you guys, I mean, if you don't own a Stanley Cup, like they are missile sized. Like they are just massive, okay? They're the size of a water tower in your small hometown. And like so to just think that like you're putting that in a crossbody bag because it's so fucking clunky and heavy that you can't like carry it the fuck around like a normal person. Like no, it's no, simply no on my end. All right? My only excuse for that, like the leeway I'll give here is if you're a mom, I totally understand. You got to like hold your kid and shit. You got to change diapers. And you want to keep hydrated. I get it. I get it for sure. You are excluded from this conversation. Everybody else, no, literally simply no. Last one on my list for this week. And we might have we might just have like a world war cubed here. Is that what that would be? 3? Yeah. All right. So we're talking about Mitch McConnell. All right. So you guys, g- what is with I, can we get a health update on Mitch McConnell? Like, bro, what are you doing? Like, guy has had 5 strokes on camera and no one is like pushing him out of here. Bro, like just retire. Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired? Like, isn't it exhausting to like pretend like you have it all together all the time? I mean, I think it is. And I do be doing that. I do be pretending like I have my shit together. Okay. So anyway, those are my world war or world peace topics this week. Almost all world war. Damn. Really wish we had a world peace in there. But, sometimes the dues just have to be had. Mental health is one of my favorite topics to talk about, mostly because, as I stated in episode one, basically everyone I know and love is mentally ill, whether they know it or not. One thing I failed to mention earlier is that so much of my healing so far has come from and will continue to come from having these conversations with others about their own journeys and of just, rambling into the abyss about mine. The way that we create community is by sharing and all of that, blah, blah, blah. You get it. But really, it is. It is the way that we create community. It's the way that we feel less alone. So, anyway, like I said earlier, if you want to chat more about mental health or any of the topics I discussed today, please feel free to message me. Send me a DM. Again, it's at Ann World Peace Pod on Instagram. You can reach me there. I'm also at Gehlsen. And that will be all for this week, sweet angels. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you next time. All my love and world peace, y'all.